Sweet. Let's make some video content. My microphones might not last that long, but we'll see. All right, I think the PVC is the best way to learn this if we're going to talk about clean and jerk and the snatch, right? Those are the two movements that you're most interested in. Mm-hmm. So you're going to see a lot of things that are the same between the two, which is kind of nice. Like there are some easy rules you can follow to be able to learn these two movements and then be able to apply them to the other accessory movements like the front squat and the deadlift and the overhead squat and hang cleans and all these, like they're almost like practice movements that develop the different parts of the two lifts. But generally the clean and jerk starts from the floor with a relatively narrow grip. You come up, you do this sort of explosive shrug, and you land under the bar as it's weightless. This is where you reset. So we'll talk about how to like set up and hold your breath to pull from the floor. But you take another breath after you've recovered to set your tension, to sort of set your abs. And then when you're holding that breath, the jerk is overhead, and that's the lift. And then you just dump it. Especially if it's heavy and you're doing like a 1 rep thing. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you can bring it back down, carry it back down to the starting point. If you're trying to rep them out, then you can rep them out like that, right? So we'll go through all the details of this. The snatch is different because now you're taking a wider grip. You're going to go directly from the ground to overhead. You basically start a little deeper in your squat. And the first two components of the pull, the first pull are similar. You're going to explode again, get the bar weightless. It travels a straight path up across your face to get weightless, and then you catch it in a snatch position or an overhead squat position to stand it back up. And if it was really heavy, right, if the weight was really heavy, you'd come up and the bar would only float to here, and you'd have to drop really fast underneath it to a full depth to catch it before standing it back up. And then you dump it, right? Or you bring it back down, reset, snatch, boom, back down, reset, snatch, boom. Mm-hmm. If it's lighter and you're repping it out. Mm-hmm. That make sense? Mm-hmm. So clean and jerk, narrow grip, snatch, wider grip. Generally, you use a hook grip when you do this. So you have your thumb wrapped around and you grab with your fingers to lock the bar into your hand so that your grip isn't a limiting factor. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but in the snatch, it's the same thing. You hook your thumb and you hook grip it. It'll kind of feel like your thumb is being crushed against the bar as you start to pull the weight off the floor at first, but you'll get used to it. Some people tape their thumbs, but this creates a really strong position to grip from. Okay. You're like totally locked in. I don't do that with all the other lifts, but with these two lifts, I find it really helpful. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the deadlift is sort of a nice movement to know about because it's really the foundation for getting the bar up to the point where you explode and get the bar to float, weightless, right? Mm-hmm. So with a deadlift, generally you learn it with your hands in a clean width position. When you're starting from the floor, you're going to have your feet kind of underneath your shoulders. I like to have my feet relatively straight. I'm actively pushing my knees apart from one another. Mm-hmm. And I make sure that I establish this sort of like erect spine, shoulder blades squeezed together, like strong, integrated, organized position, right? Some people even think about like putting force into the bar as though they're going to bend it around their shins. Mm-hmm. But this is the setup for the deadlift. I'm kind of looking at the ground, right? The difference between the deadlift and the snatch is that in the clean is that with the clean you start slightly more upright in your body. Same with the snatch. A little deeper squat, different from a deadlift where your butt might be a little higher. It's subtle, but we'll come back to that, okay? So when I deadlift heavy, I don't hook grip. If it gets too heavy, I'll flip my hands and I'll mixed grip so I can lock the bar in this way or this way if my grip starts to fail. Does that make sense? Because the weight with the deadlift for me is way heavier than my clean and snatch. Clean and jerk and snatch weight. So
you're just doing this move.
Yeah. So I don't hook grip when I deadlift. But anyway, that's beside the point. The deadlift starts at the mid shin, knees apart, get organized, right? We'll talk about breathing in a minute. The first part of the lift is to drive the knees back without the trunk angle changing. It's really tempting. People want to stand up right away. They're like, I want to get it up, right? But the knees are still in the way, so the bar has to go around them. We want the bar to travel a totally straight path from start to finish, on the way up and on the way down. And that means the knees have to get out of the way for the first half of the lift. The other thing that this does is it puts the hamstrings, it keeps the hamstrings on tension. So when I set up in this nice erect position, I feel my hamstrings already as I start to push my knees back. That makes me feel safe because I know they're there to work with my back, okay? So I start to push my knees back, I keep my hamstrings on tension till I find this position, okay? This position people hate because they really want to stand up and it feels like there's a lot of load in the back of their body and the shoulders are really forward, right? But don't skip this position because this is really important. So the first half of the deadlift is here to here. Shin to just above the knees. Nothing has changed in my spine. The second half of the lift then is to stand up. And we go back to the ground if we're doing deadlifts. The first half of the lowering is just the hips. And I go back to my knees before they bend. So they're unlocked, right? But they're not getting in the way. So the first half of the deadlift is just the hips. It's like a good morning. And again, you feel your hamstrings engage, right? Unless they're super flexible, you'll feel them engage. If your back starts to round, you'll lose it. If you stay in a nice neutral spine, the hamstrings will engage and you'll feel them participating. Then the second half of the lowering, once you've established this trunk angle, is just the knees. Back to mid-shin. So it's two parts, knees, hips, knees.
It's almost like when you take the knees back, it just gets out of the way and the bar just wants to go straight
Keeps
down.
them out of the way. And you're sliding down your thighs and then sliding down your shins without taking your skin off, of course. I would almost delay your knee bend a little longer. Like keep your knees unlocked, but don't let them bend so much. Don't let them start to bend until there. And that's the position that feels really vulnerable, that people want to skip.
Right here.
Yes. It's so important though. It'll make you feel super durable as you get used to it. That's
Right
it. The other thing people want to do is their knees will collapse or their shoulder blades will start to round forward and they'll lose the tension through their back. We're trying to maintain the whole posterior chain of the body integrated, tied together so that it's all participating. So it's set up here, hamstrings are always on tension. Here to here, they stay on tension. Cool? That's the deadlift. So that'll be the first two poles of those two Olympic lifts. Really start to feel like a deadlift. That's why it's good to practice. So with a clean and a jerk, we're always starting from the ground, right? Everybody has a different little, when people go to swing a golf club, they have they go through the same routine of how they grip the club and how they set their feet and how they wiggle the club. Everybody has a similar sort of setup routine that they go through. Some people go down and they approach the bar already here. Some people go down and they get settle in and they go like this, right? And you can decide what works for you. What's important for me is that you find a way to get into a reliable setup position. And then you use your abdominals to establish sort of a tension through your midline. You're trying to trying to pressurize it. And you do that before you do the lift by breathing out, which draws the abs in. And you be intentional about, if you were going to take a punch, you don't want it to bulge out. When people wear weight belts, the abs push out against the belt, and that's the reverse contraction that you really want to be strong, right? So you exhale. You can either do it before you approach the bar or after you've established your position. And then once you've drawn this in, you take a quick sip of air without letting this blow out again. And that quick sip of air is what pressurizes the cylinder, right? Once you've taken that sip of air, you do your lift and you hold your breath through the whole lift. If it's a deadlift, now I'm going to reset at the top. And I hold the breath through the whole rep, and I only reset at the top.
Wow.
Okay?
I didn't know any of that.
If it's a clean, I'm going to start here. Right? So anytime the bar's moving, you're holding your breath. If it's a snatch, I'm going to go down.
And you release it behind you or in front of you?
At the top.
At the top?
This is where you breathe. Yep.
That's where you breathe.
Yep.
But then if you were going to drop it, you always drop it in front of you.
If you drop it, you just drop it in front of you, and then you reset your breath
I see.
to the breath hold, right? And as you cycle these, and if you're doing them with lighter weight, cycling them, you learn how to do this really fast. So with the deadlift, it would be you see how every time at the top, I'm breathing out to re-engage and then breathing in quickly so I get a little oxygen, right? But by the end of like a set of 10, you almost get a little lightheaded when it's heavy because you're not taking full breaths. You know, you're focused more on stability because oxygen is not an energy source with these lifts, right? It's glucose, it's creatine. You're not relying on oxidative energy where you need to breathe. Does all that make sense?
Yeah.
I'll share the video with you so that you can sort of go through it and review it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So all of these same rules apply if it's a back squat. When you unrack it and you're going to go set it up. Every rep, I'm pressurizing the cylinder, right? Taking my sip of air, and then I'm solid through here. That's it. And when you breathe out, you're reestablishing your abs every time, right?
But you breathe out once you get to the top.
You breathe out
Not
once
while
you
you're
get to the
doing it.
top, not while you're doing it.
Okay.
You want to
I didn't
hold
see
that breath. And I really think of some like the lowering lifts, like the front squat and the back squat, as like loading a spring. So every time I go down, I have pressure in my breath, in my core. I'm driving my knees out to create tension in my hips. I'm fighting like crazy to keep my elbows up so that my back has a lot of tension in it. And what else am I doing? And I'm working to sort of keep my back straight, right? So I'm not collapsing into this position. So there are lots of things you could focus on with those lifts, but the point is, as you go down into the lift, the tension actually increases like loading a spring so that you can come back up. You don't go to the bottom and like get soft and then hope to recover it, right? When it gets heavy, it's like, you're building this tension as you go down, right? Which feels really good.
Do you ever just go down and just like sit in this position?
Yeah, it's good to practice, get used to that position. Good for your knees. The other thing that you just did there, driving your knees apart, is one thing most people forget about. But the other almost more important cue that translates to almost every movement you do, whether it's a pistol or a lunge or a Bulgarian split squat or a back squat or a front squat or whatever, the sequence of the movement should be hips first, right? Butt back first, then the knees. And the reason this is important is because we want to sequence this so that your butt and your hamstrings are in charge. These are your big drivers of almost every athletic sport you'll ever play, is your glutes. So we want to go hips, knees on the way down. Same with the deadlift, hips, knees, right? Same with the front squat, hips, knees. It's the same with the lunge. I'm going to step back, I'm going to go for my hip, and then I'm going to drop into my lunge and my knee. And that puts the hips in charge, not the knees. It's a big reason people have knee pain is because they initiate the squat from their knees.
Their knees over the foot.
It's not about the knees going over the toes. That's not a problem. For me to squat deep, my knees aren't going to go over my toes until the bottom of the range, right? So it's hips, knees, ankles. I only need my ankles at the bottom because if I don't, I end up here, which isn't strong, or I just can't get the depth, right? So I want my ankles to come here, just not till the end. And then I want to get my ankles out of there, get my knees straight, and then I want to stand up. So the sequence is always hips first. That's what generates the right motor pattern. So your knees don't end up being the prime mover, right?
Yeah, I feel way better.
So that's a rule that you can apply to almost every movement. Now, one thing you're doing with your head is you're wanting, which is very natural, to keep your head here, like looking at the horizon. A lot of people do it too when they go into a deadlift. They want to end here. Theoretically, this is a stronger position. I'm looking at your feet. So my head basically follows my body with these movements. Where we break that rule, it's kind of funny, is during a clean and a snatch. So during this setup for a clean and a snatch, you're looking here, not here. I don't honestly know why, but that's just what I learned. Right? When I was going through the CrossFit points of performance programs, there's a reason that you start with your head a little higher to set up for that explosive movement. Cool?
How's that look?
Looks great. And again, we're not looking for perfection. There are a lot of things to think about, right? Like there are 20 things to master as you're practicing these things. So it's just about making them a habit. Like I don't think about pushing my knees out anymore. It just happens. I don't even have to think about it.
What about the butt wink?
That's a good question. So the butt wink, if I was doing a back squat, would be, like I start in this nice neutral spine position, which I'm trying to kind of maintain to the bottom, but I get here and I lose my butt, my back flexes, my tailbone sort of tucks under, and I've lost this to this, right? And that can be because the muscles aren't strong enough to do it in that range. Yeah, it could be because the hips aren't flexible enough, so you have to do that. It could be because your ankles aren't participating, so you're way back here. You can't find that ankle mobility to allow you to be in a neutral position. There are a lot of reasons that the butt might wink, but ideally you want to try to get rid of that. Maybe start with a little bit less depth, but really work to sort of mobilize your hips and ankles and get your muscles. The muscles have to figure it out. Like this is a lot. Like some of my clients will be on the table and they have like plenty of hip flexion and they have plenty of ankle motion and they seem strong, but when they try to put it together under load, their brain and nervous system kind of freaks out and says no, right? And so they can't do it all together in the functional movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, so that was like the long lead up to the two movements that we were ideally hoping to learn, right?
Right.
So this is where the sequence changes a little bit, okay? So let me just go in slow-mo. So with the clean, I told you I hook grip. I'm still driving my knees out. I still develop this tension. I have my head up this time, so I'm less deadlift, more clean. See how subtle that is? Deadlift, clean. This is my starting point. The first thing I do is drive my knees back. Okay? Now I'm up to my knees. It's just like a deadlift. The second thing I do That's the first pull. It's slow with both these movements. You don't explode yet. The second pull, now I actually get vertical in my trunk to my mid-thigh. So you see now I've violated my deadlift rule of keeping my knees straight, right? Because I went from here to here. This is like loading the gun, they say. Okay, so I'm going from the first part of the deadlift to the first part of the clean. And then the third pull is thrust with your hips. It's called triple extension. My knees extend, my hips extend, my spine extends, and I shrug. I even come up on my toes a little bit. So up until this point, slow, patient, and then from here is where you explode. And you go boom, like this, okay? And what this does is it gets the bar weightless. So I'm not pulling the bar here, it's floating. And I still want it to go straight. If I'm getting it to a clean, I want it to go straight up in front of me. If I'm going to a snatch, I want it to continue straight up in front of me. Shave my face, right? You almost have to get your head out of the way before you come underneath it, okay? It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see in slow motion.
And it's all from the hips?
So it's slow, boom.
So it's this.
It's triple extension. So it's knees, hips, but you're right. You're using your hips to kind of like get the bar to float up, not out, because if it goes out, you're going to lose control of it. You want it to come up. And this practicing this pattern of letting the bar float like this is really important. This is also how you bring it back down. It can, if it's light. If it's heavy, it may only float to here. And so if that's as high as it gets, guess what you have to do?
Get under it.
Fucking get under it really fast. And now you're in your front squat, right? So if you do a front squat, now this is familiar and you can stand it up. But you have to get there really fucking fast, right? Depending on how heavy it is and how high the bar floats. If it floats high enough, you can just power clean it and land there. Or you can just muscle clean it and you come up and you do your triple extension and you don't even have to squat. It just goes to there because it's so light. And then from there you can either strict press it, you can push press it, or you can push jerk it. You see the difference? So strict press is just arms. Push press is a little help from your legs, but you just end tall. And the jerk is you bend and then you rebend. That's the jerk.
I see.
Some people will squat jerk where it's so heavy that they go because they can't get the bar very high. Right? Some people will split jerk where they go and they land in a lunge and then they stand up.
Okay.
But the reason it's a jerk is because you're bending and then rebending.
I see. You're bending your arms.
Bending your knees.
Knees. Okay, knees and then knees.
And then rebending or rebending.
I see.
Because
That's the jerk.
you're trying to get underneath it because it's heavy.
Okay.
It's all about how far can you get the bar to float, how high, how much force can you generate to get the bar up,
I see.
right?
It's a lot of moves. Yeah.
That's why it's technical,
Yeah.
you know, and it takes just repetition. So practice that a couple times. Let's do it in slow motion together. Okay, so you're down here. We have knees out. We've established good tension. Let's not worry about the breath right now, okay? We're gonna straighten the knees. Then we're going to rebend the knees, get the trunk upright. We've gone from here to here. This is loading the gun, okay? So we got the bar. Essentially, this is just getting the bar off the fucking ground. This is loading the gun. And this is the triple extension that gets the bar up to the front rack. And notice like it goes into your throat. If you're catching it right, your elbows come forward as high as you can get them. It's hard when you don't have weight on there, but if I put weight on there, the elbows come here, and the more you can catch it and land it on your delts here, the better it's going to be. Right? It should be sitting on my delts, not on my collarbones, but it's like really high up into your throat.
I feel like a ton of tension right in here.
Okay, yeah, and mobility-wise,
Yeah.
you're not quite able to get your elbows as high yet, and that's okay. But you can see how quick you need to get from here to boom, catch. It's quick. Mm-hmm. And to get the bar to come up instead of out is tricky to practice it.
Totally.
Because it's tempting to want to bump it out like a kettlebell swing. People do that, but it's not as efficient when the weight gets heavier.
Yeah.
You don't want the weight to go here. You want it to go straight up.
You got to get under it.
Yeah, and it gets away from you, and it's a little messy. It's like slicing or hooking a golf ball. Let's do it again. So knees out, get your tension, look at me, sort of butt drops a little bit, get the weight off the ground, trunk comes upright, rebend the knees, boom, catch. When someone does it fast, you almost don't see all those three phases, but the first two phases are slow, slow, boom. That's the fun part.
That helped. That 3 parts. You know, it's
First pull, second pull, knees rebend. Yeah, and it's tempting to want to pull the trigger too early, and this is why it's good to do it slowly. It's tempting to get here and want to go boom, right from the knees. You have to do this like rebend where you get your trunk here so that you're ready to receive the bar when you do that explosion, right? So that second pull is, I think, the trickiest part.
So when you start doing weighted, are you just doing with the bar?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Throw 10 pounds on?
If that. I mean, we can try it with this bar in a minute. Okay?
Interesting.
So the snatch is very similar until the point where you explode. Okay? The biggest difference is your hand is wide. In my case, I'll go out almost like 1 or 2 inches from the collars on both sides when I set up. I'm still hook gripping. I'm still starting in this like head up, erect position. My knuckles point to the ground. So instead of being here, I'm here, right?
Your crease of your elbows down.
If I do anything, I'm going to break the bar this way again, like I'm bending it around my arm. So I'm putting that energy in my shoulder blades and my spine. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's the same feeling you'll get overhead. Knees are driving out. First pull, get the weight off the ground. Second pull, reorient, right? Knees rebend, trunk comes upright. You're kind of lower now, right? Because your hands are wide. Third pull, triple extension. Bar floats right in front of your face. You roll your hands over and you catch it. It should be right over your feet. So it's funny, if you look at the line of the bar path, it starts over the middle of my feet, it stays over the middle of my feet, it travels up over the middle of my feet, and then I catch it over the middle of my feet.
Wow.
Even if I have to land down here, it still stays balanced over the center of my feet.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you look from the side, when I'm down here, it's behind my head, right? My head's in front of it to get it over my feet. As I come up, it's back over my head again. And this is why the overhead squat is such a great accessory movement, because you're practicing controlling the balance of the bar in all of these different positions. Let's try a few of those. Good. You're a good mover. You'll feel the balance more when you have weight. It'll dump forward or backward. So start from the bottom again. Let your knuckles point to the ground. Nice hook grip. Knees push back, slow. Right? Rebend the knees, trunk comes upright. That's the loading the gun. Triple extension. Boom. Catch. Good. The other mistake people make is they get here, they reload the gun, and then they pause and they have to go like that. Oh, yeah. You don't want to go back down again. You want to go boom, 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 right? You want to
upward movement.
Yeah, you want to keep that momentum into the explosive part.
Okay. So you don't pause.
Don't pause. We're breaking it into 3 parts, right? Because I want you to see the nuance in slow motion. and why each phase is important. Off the ground, load the gun, boom! And if it's in fast motion, it's like that. It's one fluid movement.
All this audio will be on there?
Yeah. I got the microphone on. When I say boom, it's going to be really loud. Keep saying that. So the last thing I'll say, because this is one thing most athletes forget about, is how quickly you have to find the right shoulder position when you catch it in a jerk, right? You have to quickly find this front rack, which is hard, it's awkward. And then when you press it overhead, you have to quickly find this, I would say, strong loaded position. Mm-hmm. And remember how I said, it's kind of like you're trying to break the bar when you go to pull off the ground. Mm-hmm. It's the same feeling up here. I'm not breaking the bar with my hands though. I'm breaking the bar by screwing my shoulder into position such that it would feel like my thumb would want to pop off the bar. But of course it has to stay on the bar. So this looks like going from here to here. My shoulders are at my ears. I'm internally rotated. That's the wrong position. My shoulders are away from my ears. I'm not overusing my neck. My shoulders actually drop and they sort of screw into this really stable, strong position. Whether you're narrow or wide, same thing. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Your armpits are like headlights, right? And you're putting that energy up into the bar, but from your shoulder blades. And so your ability to get there quickly versus there is going to make a difference whether you can catch it or not.
It just looks so much better.
It looks better.
Yeah.
And you have the mobility to do it. So grab the 35-pound barbell and just experiment a little bit with some of these ideas. Face the camera so we can all see your handsome face. Sure. So hook grip. Take them a little wider so they're not in the way of your knees, right? Because we want your knees pushing out to activate your glutes. Don't worry about breathing yet again either. Just focus on the 3 parts. 1, rebend. 2, and then the triple extension. Let's try a little faster. Let your butt drop a little more at the start. Get your chest a little more upright. There you go. Yeah, knees back. So you did your explosion before the second pull that time. You did first pull, explode. So go slow. Patience. First pull, body upright, rebend the knees, then explode. Good. That's it. And you're not pausing because it's not heavy enough to like reset your breath, which is fine. You're catching it and then going again. And if you're in a CrossFit workout, you'd want to cycle it fast, like that. If you're just doing it for a weight, you're going to pause, reset your breath, get yourself organized, and then that was a strict press. But yeah, that was a push press, sorry. So many details, right?
So many. Wow.
Knees back, first pull. Keep that bar really close to you. First pull, second pull, boom. And it's tempting to want to pause there, isn't it? To not carry that momentum because your nervous system isn't quite ready for that triple extension that I was talking about. But when the weight gets heavy, you'll notice that it totally holds you back to pause. There are times in workouts when we pause to make sure that you can initiate that explosion without the pull off the ground. That would be called a hang snatch or a hang clean, where you're starting here, you're dipping, and then you're going right into the explosion. So you're just practicing this, right? That would be a hang clean, a hang power clean. Dip, go. Good, that was great. So that would be a hang power clean. If you want to do a hang power snatch, you go out wide with your hands, get your snatch grip even wider. And you can go as narrow as you want, but snatch tends to be easier when you're wide. Same thing, you do a dip, triple extension, yeah, get it overhead. That would be a hang snatch, power snatch. Dip, go, good. kind of a fun drill, right?
Kind of was throwing it forward, I felt.
Yeah, it's all right. And again, this is why it's like a golf swing, because if the bar goes a little forward as you explode, you're going to probably miss it forward. You know, if your weight's too far back, you're going to miss it back. So you get better at saying, how do I need to explode to get the bar to travel a really predictable straight path up? And of course, as the weight gets heavier, it gets much harder.
Yeah. Am I doing that right?
Yeah, so pause at the knees. Like, right, nothing changes here for the first pull. There, that's pull 1. Pull 2 is get your body upright. Your knees are going to have to rebend a little bit to do that, right? And then pull 3 is boom, explode. Yeah, that's it. Okay?
Okay. Sweet.
You can practice any component of that movement. When we warm it up in a class, we'll practice first pull, first pull, first pull, second pull, second pull, second pull, right? And then we'll go, let's practice this one. Boom. You know, dip, boom, dip, boom. You can break it apart into those 3 parts.
That's great.
To put it
To
together.
warm everything up.
Yeah. You can practice your jerks. You can just, as a movement like that guy was doing at the gym you said today. So remember, you're not getting upright until you get your knees the fuck out of the way. First pull, get the knees out of the way, just like a deadlift. Keep that bar close to you. See all the details? Keep that bar close to you. That's the first pull. Get the knees the fuck out of the way. Second pull, get your trunk upright. Your knees rebend a little bit because they kind of have to. Third pull, explode. Triple extension. Cool? And notice, bring it up to the top again. Do a hang clean. By the way, the hang movements are just knee bend because your trunk doesn't angle this much. It's just knee bend. Boom. That would be the hang. But go overhead again. Notice that when you get overhead, to lock it out, your head comes through, right? That's the true sort of lockout. Maintaining this midline, I would almost encourage you to have a little more ab tension, but we didn't talk about your breath. So you didn't have that tension established, right? When we left the ground. So you'd be more likely to end up in this like broken sort of back bendy position. Yeah, locked in, right? And so like that right there in and of itself is a really great training exercise. I'll have people lock that in and I'll have them march, right? I'll have them squat.
Do you do this class?
This is all from CrossFit. This is all
Okay.
Traditional Olympic lifting, but I learned it through the CrossFit methodology, which is a mix of doing really heavy lifts, but also using it in like Metcon context where it's lighter and you're cycling really fast, and metabolic conditioning, like a cardiovascular workout where the snatch might be a one movement among like 5 or 6 in a workout, and you're having it to go quick, right? So you have to really know the movement well. And that's why it's important whenever you're learning these things, know that the movement pattern is the most valuable part of the whole thing. The weight and the speed is way less important. So for you as a mover, as an athlete, if you can master the movement pattern, that's more than half the battle.
Get that locked in.
Get the movement pattern locked in, get the sequence, develop the habits, get the breath with the lighter weight, and then rep it, repeat it, and then start adding load and speed.
Tape record yourself
Wait.
so you can see little things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Wow,
Watch it in slow-mo, like we're both sweating just from doing this with an empty barbell.
That's awesome.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the difference between a power clean. So a power clean goes from here, right? You catch it high. Could be like that. A squat clean, even if it's light, you can do this on purpose. You're hitting the bottom to practice, even if it's light, and then you're standing. Squat clean. Power clean.
This is not as deep.
Right.
Squat clean, power clean is not as deep.
Same with snatch. power snatch, right? And squat snatch.
That's awesome.
And then there's a muscle snatch.
Where you don't bend at all. It's all one move.
It's light.
Yeah.
If you're trying to go really fast.
Yeah.
Notice when I come back down, I'm rolling my wrists right back in front of my face, straight down to my hips, and then down to the floor. Right, one smooth move. You can pause here if you want, and then go with a clean, right down in front of my face. It's like the press. Roll it down, back to the beginning. So you're always trying to kind of keep it here, close to you. I messed that one up. I was going to snatch fast.
Love it. Can you turn that way?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I can also rebend and use that to press it really fast if I don't want to pause.
Totally getting your hips into it.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? And if you see people doing this in slow motion, they're fully here at the peak of the third extension, right?
Up on your toes.
And sometimes the bar only gets this high. And so they're going from this to this so fast because that's as high as the bar floated. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Or they're going from this to this because that's as high as the bar floated.
Wow.
So fast.
I'm gonna watch this on TV. I want to see these videos.
I have some videos I share.